What is up, everyone? Hello, hello. Happy Saturday. It's good to see all of you that are here in the chat who are already repeat guests that I recognize. Thank you so much for tuning in every week. We're doing this every Saturday live stream. Normally, at least the last two times, it's been me. And today we have a special guest who will be joining us very soon. So I'm hoping there are some people who came here to hear what Neal Sendlak has to say from Gnostic Informant, our special guest. And there are several reasons why I am having Neal on today. And I could talk a little smack about him before he shows up. Neal and I traveled to Greece back in April. And Yasha Adoni, hello, everyone. Hello, Neo Prototype, Ali, Brandon, all the regulars. Hello, hello. So Neal and I traveled to Greece in April, and we've never really done a full public debriefing of our trip. We've done a little bit on his channel. I think I've been on one live stream so far with him, or maybe it was a video where we talked about his impressions. And it was very interesting as somebody who has traveled there a lot myself. And at this point, I think my metrics are showing that like 15% of my viewers are coming from Greece right now. So that's amazing. If anybody is watching from Greece, please say hello in the chat. I really appreciate the support from all of my Greek friends as a Philelinas, as a Phil Helene. And I'm a little jaded. I've been to Greece like 10 times. I got all these stamps on my passport. I go there like every few months. And so it's very interesting. It was an interesting experience to, I offered to sort of be Neal's tour guide because I was teaching him ancient Greek. So he was taking ancient Greek lessons from me. And he really wanted to go. We planned it for like a year and we kept putting it off. And finally, we were just like, okay, we're booking it. We're going in April. I think we booked like 2 weeks in advance in the Airbnb and the tickets. And I got to sort of experience it through his eyes, through somebody who, just to see somebody there for the first time, because I was there for the first time over a decade ago. I went there on my honeymoon for the first time. And it was interesting to, see, he went there with a really particular mission that he'll tell you about. Because I want him to, talk a little bit about the things that he's working on, but he's very much more focused on the, Greece, the classical period, right? He's more focused on classical Greek texts and sources, and I'm more focused on the Christian era. And so he was coming through, from viewing it through the lens of having his interest be based mainly on classical Greece, and as a non-believer. And so I wanted to sort of show him, kind of get his boots on the ground in Athens and in other parts of Greece that I had never traveled to. I actually was going to certain places for the first time, Corinth in particular, Delphi, and seeing it, alongside him was very enlightening for me to get like his impressions. And I want him to share some of that with you guys today. Also, my mission in going there was to mainly to film this interview with an Orthodox priest in an Orthodox church during Holy Week, right? That was my mission, and I accomplished that mission. And it was partly thanks to Neal, who brought all of his equipment and filmed this whole interview and did rigged up the audio and everything like that. So I couldn't have done it without him. So I'll thank him as soon as he shows up. And he went there with his equipment to shoot his own documentary that he's still working on. And it's been, look, we got back in May. We were there for a whole month, and all of May and June, I was editing, like May, June, July, basically like 3 months. I was editing my interview. He's been editing his stuff. I know you guys are going to really enjoy it when it all finally comes out. But his focus really, and I don't want to steal his thunder, he'll tell you about it, is more focused on a broad array of the history from, polytheistic original, classical Greek religion, politics, and then all the way through to the modern era and the sort of transition from polytheism to monotheism. That was his interest. And so for him, filming me interviewing an Orthodox priest played into his narrative of that he wanted to capture in his documentary. And then for me, I was just mainly focused on giving my viewers the perspective of somebody who grew up in the Protestant tradition towards, Orthodoxy, which for me is still very exotic, right? And so I think for a lot of my viewers, it's exotic. And even though I have apparently captured a certain portion of the Greek audience who's watching this too, out of curiosity, I know that for them it's all kind of like they're used to this sort of thing, like it's not exotic to them, and they probably even have trouble. Well, I know that some of the people that I know have trouble understanding what the appeal is. What is it that attracts foreigners, xeni, to Greek Orthodoxy. And there's a phenomenon right now going on online of the sort of ortho bros. Like there are lots of Orthodox content creators that are very active right now. There's a mass wave of people converting to Eastern Orthodoxy, and so I figured it would be relevant to give this perspective and really just sit down with a guy who, with Father Evangelos Markadonis that I interviewed. And the problem that we ran into was that I couldn't find anyone to do the interview in English. We did it in Greek. We went over this last week, but the bottom line is I first released the version that was in English. So it's dubbed over with a sort of AI voice clone that sounds a lot like him, but it's not him. And then today we have officially released the Greek version. So the link is right here in the chat. So you should please click on that, go watch it. And even if you're watching this live stream, open up a tab and just play it in the background. I think we have 12 people now. If 12 people would do that, please, it really helps our initial metrics. Sure, you can go back and watch it later, or maybe you've already watched it in English. So I get it. A lot of people don't want to read subtitles for an hour and a half. This is the theory that I'm going to test, that that Neal and I have gone back and forth on. Is it more likely that the majority of people who get access to this video would prefer to listen to it for an hour and a half in the AI dub, or would most people prefer to just listen to the original language and read the subtitles? I think Neal would put his money on the fact that people don't want to listen to subtitles for an hour and a half. And I just got feedback from certain people. I think Neo Prototype, a few other people have reached out and said, you know what, I'd rather just listen to this in the original Greek, because the AI voiceover technology is still not 100% there, right? It sounds pretty, it's pretty good. It's pretty miraculous, pretty natural. Not all the way there quite yet. So today's version that was released is the original Greek audio. And for anybody who has, I've received a lot of positive feedback from Greek people who jump into the comments and say, and compliment my Greek abilities. But please, anybody who says my Greek is quote unquote perfect, I know that's just sort of like hyperbole, hyperbole. It's anybody who has said that may want to retract it when they see the full version, because you're going to hear all of my my slip ups and mistakes and wrong words and things that I said that I thoroughly regret. But it was a learning experience. In trying to sort of script, I scripted some of the questions so that I could at least practice them and sound okay when I was asking him questions. But it was very the AI is a bit uncanny to me. So the AI is a bit uncanny. It's funny because I haven't sent it to Father Evangelos yet. I'm probably going to send him the original version today. I'm trying, if you go to, so like, let's just make sure we cover our bases. If you go to crossbible.com, and I'm going to share the tab. So make sure you go to crossbible.com. If you open up the menu on the blog page right now, okay, it's up. So I've posted the blog. The images aren't showing here. Okay, boom. So okay, the thumbnail's not updated, but basically the the first blog post that you see, this is just playing the trailer, but this video is going to be updated. I am going to have a full transcript in English here for the English dub of the video. So you'll be able to play it on the Cross Bible website and read the whole transcript. And then the ancient Greek sections will be broken out separately. I'm still working on cleaning all of that up. And then the new Greek version is, the Greek version is actually available now. So you can go on to crossbible.com. I haven't proofed this yet because yesterday, there's some mistakes. I can see some mistakes already. Yesterday, ChatGPT 5 came out, and I uploaded my transcript file to ChatGPT 5 and asked it to create this blog post from it so that I didn't have to do it manually. And for all of the hype about ChatGPT 5, it still fails. It still doesn't do really things that you would consider pretty basic, like processing an SRT transcript file and making a blog post out of it. It just doesn't do very well. It made a lot of mistakes. So I'm going to keep cleaning this up. But if you want the transcript in Greek, you want the transcript in English, it's going to be here. All right. So now, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my guest.
What's going on, man?
Hey, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, man. I'm excited for this.
So I was giving a little background on our trip in April, and I don't think we've ever done a proper kind of debriefing of what we both experienced there.
Right.
Some of it will what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens in Athens stays in Athens. But I think we can let people know about some of the things that we experienced, and I want to get your perspective.
Yeah.
Because as I said, I'm really jaded. I've been there so many times. It's really like, a second home for me. It's probably the foreign country I've traveled to the most in my life. Up there with, I don't know. I don't know actually if I took an inventory, if I've traveled more to Russia or to Greece, but those are the two places I've gone. And those are two places that happen to be Eastern Orthodox countries. And so I'm still very much of an outsider. It's still very, very exotic to me, but for you, it must have been like, shocking in some sense. And so I'd get your thoughts on that.
It was very life-changing. Very life-changing.
Really?
Yeah. It was it was the greatest trip I've ever been on in my entire life. I liked it better than Israel.
Wow.
Israel was great. I enjoyed that too. But actually, they both were really fun. Egypt, great. I would say it's the last of the three for reasons that we won't get into, but Greece was just mind-blowing because I just, I went and saw as many things as I can, just like every day, driving far in the rental. You and I were most of the time not with each other. Most of the time, I mean, we met up like pretty often, but it was like 2/3 of the time you and I were not together.
We did a good week. I think we did like almost a week, almost a full week in the beginning, and then we started breaking up. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. About 2/3 of it was you, me, and we're not together. Only about 1/3 of it, I would say, you and I were. That's how much we separated while we were there. But right? Would you agree with that, or maybe?
I think it was the first like 3 or 4 days. But that's why I went earlier than I was supposed to be there, so I could spend that time with you and get you at least get you oriented. And then I was just slammed, and then we met up like sporadically for certain events that we were participating in. So I'm curious, where do you stand now in terms of the progress of like the stuff? Like, can you make any announcements on what's coming out on your channel and like what you're working on?
Yeah, well, excuse me. I was just gonna say, so when I went on my adventure by myself, I had one friend that I met who's from America. But we were I actually met him there for the first time. We were friends on Twitter and stuff like that. He was there too. We met up and we drove all the way to Arcadia, deep in the Peloponnese, down in the south, in the country where Pan dwells. And we're taking this little rental car, and like we're driving through the mountains, and we're going through these little hill cities. And I'm not kidding. These are like one lane, little tiny streets. I don't even know if you call them streets. They're like sidewalks. and we're going up these giant hills. If I make one mistake, I'm falling off the hill. And my anxiety was through the roof the whole time, but it was so fun. But we filmed a bunch of people we met, interviewed a bunch of people, because that's where real pagans live, down there. It's actually funny because the word pagan means rustic. It means like country dweller, and that's kind of how it is over there. The people out in the countryside are pagans. The people in the city are Christians. And you saw it during Easter. Where were we during Easter? On Easter night at midnight. We were in the deep city of Athens, and everybody was in a religious frenzy, I want to call it. A Bacchic religious frenzy through Christ, though. Like, we saw people rocking back and forth. Remember, we saw people like this.
But that was in the church, yeah.
They're all chanting Greek shit, oh my God. And like, they were into it. They love their Christianity there. But then you go out to the country, and you go out to Corinth. Corinth is not as big as this city. You know, you go out to Arcadia, you go to Epidaurus, you know.
Yeah,
that's where all the pagans are.
This is what we saw. This was like just around the corner from where we were.
Yeah, this is at midnight.
Yeah, I think not.
Everyone's like out at midnight,
11 o'clock, but this lasted until midnight.
That's what I'm saying. This is a midnight. Yeah. We're waiting for midnight. That's what we're doing.
Yeah,
no one there left before midnight. No one.
Shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah,
yeah.
And then there was still a huge crowd at 4 a.m. Remember, we were out till 4 a.m. Huge crowds out there, and they're all running around, and they're all walking through the streets, and they all have their torches lit, and oh man, it was crazy. And the ceremony reminded me of the ceremony that we're told about with the ancient mysteries, where they go into the inner sanctum. This is how it's described in the Eleusinian mysteries. This is how it's described in the Attis mysteries and in the Osiris mysteries. And what's his name? Who writes the Arnobius is one of them, and the other one was I'm trying to think of his name. Anyways, I'll think of it later. And so these late antiquity writers are writing about these pagans that are still around right before during that period between Constantine and Theodosius. The pagans are still around. He describes them doing these festivals where they go into the inner sanctum and they turn off all the lights, and it's completely dark, and it's midnight. So far it's a 1-to-1 comparison we're looking at. And then he says, then the high priest, the Hierophant, lights a torch and says, our God is saved. Everyone rejoice. And everyone gets all like crazy and gets into a frenzy. And then they all light their torches off that torch, and they get like, that's what we saw at Easter. The Greek Páscha is like an ancient festival. That's what I respect about them, is you can tell that the Orthodox Christians in Greece are holding on to the oldest rites. Where in the West, we had all this Reformation periods in the 16th, 15th century. We went through all these changes, and people are debating on, is this pagan? Should we be doing this? Should we be looking at Mary like this? And the Greeks were like, you guys just don't get it. Yeah. You just don't get it. This is it. We figured it out. Hold on. And they held on. Okay, so that's what the Christians were doing. And Arcadia, though, whole different story. They're building temples to the gods out there. Privately, though. They can't do it publicly. If they do it publicly, they're going to be in a lot of legal issue, because then they're going to have to make it a legal religion, and they're going to have to let anyone in there. They're going to have to be like tourist attacks. Tourists are going to be able to walk through. Like, that's not what they want. They want a private initiation only. You can get there if you're invited. You're going to have to drive through a country to get there, and no one's going to see it from the public. You're not going to drive by as a tourist and look at it. It's not for you. That's the type of, it's very more esoteric, whereas Christianity is exoteric for everybody. Yeah. And that's how Greece is. That's the setup of Greece right now. You have a revival of paganism deep into the countryside. And it also reminds me of the council in Trullo. If anyone remembers me talking about this, it's a council. I think it's called the Fifth Ecumenical Council, Fifth and Sixth Ecumenical Council. So there's like a weird name for it, Fifth and Sixth Ecumenical Council. Anyways, it happened in Trullo. It was under I think it was under Theodosius II or one of the Constantines. I don't remember, actually. I'm going to look this up real quick. So I don't want to get that. Okay,
well, I'll while you look that up,
yeah,
let me just get some people oriented and like what we're talking about, right? So when we say Arcadia, So this is Greece, right? And when you zoom in on Athens, this is where we were.
Yeah.
And what we did basically, well, we took trips together, and then you took a trip by yourself. But if you drive along the coast,
Yeah, you and I went to Delphi, so we can show them how far
so
Delphi
you
is.
You can drive all the way through here, and you pass by Elefsina, Eleusis, right?
Yeah.
And then you drive around the Saronic Gulf to Corinth. So like Delphi is a different.
I was going to say you're not going the right way. I was just going to say Delphi's up.
Well, we were talking about Arcadia.
Thebes.
We're talking about Arcadia.
So
okay. To track to where Arcadia is, you pass Eleusis, right? And people would do this by foot back in the day, right? So you pass Eleusis, you go around.
Oh, the Sacred Way was still visible.
Yeah,
the Sacred Way was still visible. We saw it. Remember, we were walking. We were like, "Oh, that's part of the Sacred Way."
Yeah. So this is the Gulf of Eleusis. So you go. So this is where we went to an Eleusis. And if you keep driving down this road, and then you go past the Megara Gulf, and you hit Corinth here. So here's
beautiful Corinth, beautiful beach, beautiful everything,
amazing,
beautiful temple of Apollo. Corinth was probably my favorite city there. I think.
I really want to go back.
As far as cities go, Corinth was my favorite. It was less packed, less tourists, less Americans. I'm trying to get away from those people. No offense.
And you can see, yeah. So the Acro Corinth is this huge like structure here, like it's this huge mountain with a castle on top of it, basically like a fortification.
That was
which
awesome.
It was close. We didn't get. See, that's why I want to go back, because I want to go back at the right time so I can actually get into those sites, because we went on a holiday. It was like Easter.
Yeah.
We couldn't really get inside.
We did walk through some of those archaeological sites though, like right there, I think. Or is that no, it's not something else.
Well, this is, I think, the archaeological museum. I think this is where the temple is, and where we were.
Yeah, that's Apollo. That's the Temple of Apollo.
Yeah, Temple of Apollo.
But on the other side somewhere, there's this random archaeological site. You might be able to see it just by the way it looks from up top. It might look like a little brown section.
Yeah,
it might be right there.
Where
I can't, maybe not. But anyway, it's over there somewhere.
Yeah. The hilarious thing, though, the funny story is that Neal and I thought we found like a secret entry. There's like a hole in the gate, and we walked through grass that was like up to our
we're like in secret mission mode.
I like
filming.
I almost broke my ankle. Like I'd stepped into like a big hole.
And then we found out that there was an opening for the public that we could.
And then we saw people like walking in, like we thought we were being so sneaky.
I know, like damn.
I had like sticky things all over me. We were all dirty, like we were like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
All right.
So now show them how far away Corinth is.
Arcadia. Yeah. So basically, this is Corinth, and Corinth is like this drive from Athens to Corinth is like it's maybe
an hour.
Is it like 2 hours?
Yeah,
all the way to Corinth.
You're right, maybe 2 hours actually. Yeah.
And then if you keep going, this is where Arcadia is. And I don't even have a pin on the exact spot that you were, but we're talking like deep in
down more.
Peloponnesos. This is the Peloponnese, right?
Yeah. So I think it's down more though.
Yeah, so you can see just mountainous. I don't know.
We actually did go and we took a car ride with Bexis and the high priestess, and we went to the west coast of the Peloponnese, and it was only like a 45-minute ride.
So I think
we were over there and all the way in the end, dude. We were all the way. There's another temple of Apollo called the Temple of Epidaurus. If you want to look that up real quick. Temple of Apollo Epidaurus. Oh no, I'm sorry, Apollo Epicurus. Sorry,
Epicurus. It's Epicurus. Okay,
yeah, so see, that's how far we were. We were right there.
And so the temple that you visited.
Look at all the mountains and hills. Look how this is not where people live. This is all the way out in the middle of nowhere. There's no one living there. And in the nighttime, you can tell. You see every star perfectly. You can see the Milky Way, everything. Beautiful out there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so this is where, like, for example, Sparta is near here. Kalamata.
Yep.
So I have never actually been this far.
And I also saw the Mycenae. I was in Mycenae. I went Epidaurus, Epidavros, which is more towards the east.
Yeah, right
over
here.
There. Yep. I went everywhere in the Peloponnese. I went everywhere around there. Like I was like in every direction in the Peloponnese. You know what I mean? It was really, really like I got the real. What I did is I got the real Bronze Age, Mycenaean / classical period experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
not as much for the Minoans, but maybe that'll be a next time thing. But we can,
then the other trip we took from Athens is we drove up this way through Attica and out of Attica into
Delphi.
Yeah,
And then remember Thebes too. Remember with Thebes, that interesting thing happened in Thebes.
Yeah, Thebes is on the way, and that was a point where we were like, we were driving there, and we were like,
I filmed it. We found the Bronze Age spot of Thebes. We found it.
Yeah, that's Thebes right here.
We found the Mycenaean layer of Thebes, and we filmed it. And that's going to be in my documentary too.
I can't wait to see that.
That came out really good. We filmed it at night with no lights. It came out amazing for some reason.
So here's Delphi. So you can see that like Delphi is you're basically like you take a wrong turn and you're falling off the mountain here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then Arachova is here. It's like a ski resort. You can.
And that's pretty much. That's a little bit more like what it was like in but there was more population up there. There was more city. There was more like restaurants in Delphi area. When you go down to Arcadia, there's one bakery. And it's also a bar. So it's a bakery during the day and a bar during the night. And that's where everyone goes. There's only one place that everyone goes. But they all are like family. These people love it out there. They're like family. They all know each other. They all love each other. They're all like, you know what I mean? Like they're a family. It was a really crazy experience. But anyways, I do want to show something real quick if I could.
Okay. Yeah. Can you, I don't know. I think you just share, right? So Neal Prototype says, I know the geography because of the Assassin's Creed game, and I should finish that game.
That's actually a really good game to learn the geography. It's like a really small down,
it's like a scaled down version. You can you can ride a horse around.
You can get an idea of where everything's at, like why, like where everything is adjacent to each other. So it's called the Quinnipiac Council. I just couldn't think of the name. It's 5th, 6th Council, which I think that means they did the 5th and 6th Council there. Is that what that means? I have no idea. I'm just guessing. It says right here, both the 5th and 6th ecumenical councils had omitted to draw up disciplinary canons. Okay, so that's why it's called that. So this is a pretty important turning point in the church. This is like up there with the Council of Nicaea. It's 5th, 6th, right? So what happened at this place? Well, what's so interesting about it is they do all this Eucharist and liturgy crap. Of course, they're always doing. They're like determining what the West should do. Because the West is already starting to do their own. The West is always doing their own thing. They didn't care. That's why there's the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. Everyone thinks the schism. It did technically happen in the early 11th century, because of like Charlemagne and the Empress. That's like the real reason why. But the schism actually happens right away. If you actually look at church history, there's a schism from day one. They're just not. The West and the East are just always at each other's throats. It's always been a schism.
Battle for primacy.
Yes, it's always like that. You have the way the Trinities pronounce, or the Council of Nicaea itself was pronounced in Latin, had like extra words. What do they call it? The
filioque.
Filioque, yeah. Okay, so that's another topic. But anyways, the reason why I wanted to pull this up is because it talks about in this council. I've read a translation of it. And it talks about, there's a whole section on pre-Christian practices. So the council, now you would think after Theodosius, this was already settled, right?
Yeah.
But it's not. The pagans are still resisting all the way into, what year is this? This is in 692. We're almost in the 8th century.
Wow.
And almost in the 8th century, and pagans are still being pagans. And it says, like, this is what Wikipedia says, so I'm just going to go. Therefore, the council gives some insight into historians about pre-Christian religion. As a consequence, neither cleric nor layman was allowed to observe the pagan festivals of Bota, Calends, and Brumalia. And it's like, and then it talks about like people making wine and like getting into like Bacchic frenzies, and they ban frivolous laughter for people making wine. And basically, if you actually read it, one of the things it says is the problems they were having were not in the cities. It was in the country. So they were going into the country of Asia Minor, of Nicaea, of Phrygia, Paphlagonia, those places like Asia Minor, where all the countrysides are, and there was just people everywhere where there was no big cities. People were pagan, and it's just like today. If you go out in the country in Greece, you're gonna find. I saw in the middle of Arcadia a statue of Pan, essaying Aphrodite. You know that famous statue of Pan and Aphrodite?
Yeah.
Aphrodite statue. This one. In the middle of Arcadia. This was just sitting there by a flowing river. And then the people I were with were like, "This river is holy." I go, "Really?" They're like, "Yeah." They all walked up to it, and they all started like rubbing their face with it and drinking the water. They're like, "Come on, come take some." And I did it with them. I walked up, I took some, started drinking it. They're like, it has healing properties. That's what they told me. And so there was a flowing river of water that they said was holy and ancient, and right next to it was this statue, Pan and Aphrodite. And this, you would never know this if you just were on some like trip with some like Athenian trip advisor person, because this is like secret, just like public or private people who live there only, a local shit. It's local, you know what I mean? Middle of nowhere. No one's driving past this thing.
So Neo Prototype is asking, did Neal learn enough Greek to get around Greece by himself?
No, because modern Greek is totally different. So even with learning ancient, I wouldn't.
But a lot of people there speak, well, I would say a lot of people in the cities speak
Everyone
English.
speaks English.
Did you have any language barrier?
You're right. In the country, it was way less speaking English, way less. But there are still people that spoke English.
And were you ever in a situation?
And it was way more broken English too, so it was way harder to understand. But everyone there has English as a second language, so you don't even need to know modern Greek. No offense. Yeah. But I did clash with some people over ancient and modern Greek, because the one dude was trying to tell me there is no ancient Greek; it's all the same. I was like, really? And I pulled out the ancient. I pulled out the Orphic hymns, and I was like, well, what do you know what this says? I was like, this is the. He's like, yeah, it's a little bit different. He's like, kind of like, whatever. He just kind of like, I don't care. It's the same.
Well, if we look a little bit, yeah, I mean, this is what I talked about in last week when I was reviewing the sort of excerpts from the interview with Evangelos Markadonis, Father Evangelos, was that he said the words are all the same, but the syntax is a little different. And I went through a lot of the hymns that he was reciting, and it's like, clearly there are cases where the words are not the same. The words are sometimes different. But, obviously there are a lot of words that are exactly the same, and you can kind of guess your way through it if you just only know modern Greek. But you do need to, and that's the thing, is I think from his perspective, like anybody who's gone through like an Orthodox seminary, who's really, reciting the ancient Greek texts every week, I don't think that they have a real clear appreciation of just how difficult it is for the average person in the congregation to understand the liturgy.
If there is so much the same, and riddle me this, and I know you agree with me. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to like the people who say that. Why would the Orphic hymns I bought this from Greece. So when you buy an English translation of a text, you know how sometimes you get like a Loeb, for example. Loeb will have the Greek on one side, English on the other. Tell me why in Greece they have Greek on one side and Greek on the other. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, they could just, if they were the same language, you would just print.
Exactly. It's literally the modern English on one side and ancient Greek on the other side. And this gives you such a clear picture of how different they are. It's like there's most of it doesn't line up. There's a few words that do. I see nuktos, nuktas. I see techna. That's okay. There's a word that matches up. Epiriaso, epiriatas, mores, morai. Like the words are not the same. It's literally a translation. You're translating ancient into modern.
Well, you know what translation is in Greek? You know what they call it?
What do they call it?
They call it a metaphrase, the metaphrasis. So like a paraphrase, basically. Paraphrase, paraphrasis, metaphrasis, they're kind of the same thing. So basically you're rewording it is what it means.
Right. You're making it sound, you're putting it back into the modern tongue. Yeah.
Yeah. Which you could do the same. Like you could create, like, for example, I have, what do I have next to me? Oh, so our favorite textbook, Athena's A,
Yeah.
So Athena's Italian edition has, I think it's part of one of the workbooks. It actually has a classical Greek paraphrase of Homer. So it's the opening of the Iliad. It's written in classical Greek, and the authors have just adapted it from Homeric Greek. So they've swapped out all the Homeric forms with classical forms, and they look very different when you hold them, like, because Homeric Greek and classical Greek are not, technically they're the same language, but they're different spectrums of that language. They're different forms of that language.
Yeah, I can take Shakespeare, and I can, if I really wanted to, I can go through Shakespeare and I can change all the giveth and thou and
can modernize it
and just modernize it, and it'd be it's a lot easier to do it in your language, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, I'm still translating a text. I'm still translating a different form of English into a new form of English.
Yeah.
Basically how it goes.
Well, and I could show, okay, so for example, if you look at Cross Bible, let me just add it to the stage. So I have two translations here in Cross Bible. One of them on the left-hand side is the patriarchal text. So that's the original in the sort of Eastern Orthodox edition. And then on the right, I have an old Katharevousa translation by Van Vass. So what Van Vass is doing is he's basically handling the original text with kid gloves, right? Like, he doesn't want to change it. And that's a feature of this particular metaphrasis, this metaphrase, this paraphrase. It's hard to call this modern Greek. It's hardly modern Greek. It is something called Katharevousa. It is the defunct formal, like, official language of Greece that was in place when they first set up the country, right? When they first won their independence. So here you say, like, in gets translated as ito, but he still has the, even though
I see most of it lines up. I see it.
Yeah, it lines up. But then you can add another version here, and
Nestle, modern Greek.
Well, yeah. So Van Vass technically is modern in terms of the period in which it was composed, but it's archaizing modern.
Yeah, you could tell.
But then I have another version here that I've licensed called Spiros Philos, which is a much more, this is in what's called Demotic Greek. So here you can see the translation is going off the rails, right? It's way different. It's way different, and it's way easier for your average modern Greek person who hasn't gone through seminary and hasn't actually learned modern Greek. Hasn't actually learned ancient Greek. This is actually much, much closer, if not identical, to more or less exactly the way people speak today. It's maybe a little bit elevated, but this is more like your NIV kind of translation. Whereas this Van Vass sounds a bit more like, fancy KJV language that nobody talks like this, right?
Right.
They can read it. It's just, he's updated certain vocabulary, but this is the spectrum, right? This is the historical spectrum. You're going from Hellenistic Greek, which is a slightly more modern form of Attic. Then you have the Katharevousa, which is now defunct, but it's still considered modern. And then you have something demotiki, which is just sort of the everyday language of Greece. And then I'm also going to soon be offering, this is one of my favorite modern Greek translations. It's a little, it's a little paraphrastic. It's not a literal translation. This is today's Greek version. We just licensed this. So this will probably be going up on Cross Bible in a month or so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a modern, modern Greek paraphrase that took me a whole year to kind of work with the Hellenic Bible Society and get that, all squared, that license squared away. I had a meeting with them in Athens, and, it's like they're very protective. There's another modern Greek paraphrase that I wanted to get by Trebelas, and have not, they just slammed the door in my face. They didn't want it to go on Cross Bible. Let's see. Ooh, we got Witch Doctor in the house.
Nice.
What's up, Neo
from the Matrix.
Yeah, so that is, let me share a couple of other things. Oh yeah, so here, this is a fun one. Does that bring back memories?
Oh yeah, that was a good spot. That was a fun spot.
The stabilizer wasn't quite working. This is like we were already jet lagged. We just arrived.
Yeah, we got. Yeah, that was the day. Well, that was day one, right?
It was day one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is north of the Acropolis in Plaka, which is like just right down the street from where Neal's first Airbnb was. So
yeah,
good.
That was a good spot. Yeah,
good time.
It sucked getting all the way up there at the end of the night when you had to get back up there, and the taxis didn't want to drive up there. But it was better because it was secure. There wasn't any like shit going around. Like you can, and that was a nice little porch that I could sit on and chill.
Yeah,
that was a good spot.
And then hold on a second. Let me see. There were a few other things that I was gonna share. Yeah, look at this. This is fun. So, oh wait. All right. See that? But wait. Ah, boom. Okay. So that was where we ended up. So you can see it's just like right. That's the north end of the Acropolis. And this little thing that you see here in the distance is, you remember what that is?
I can't tell what that. Oh, that's Temple of Nike, is that?
No. Temple of Nike is at the Propylia. Oh,
I can't tell. I can't tell in that picture.
That is the Erection.
Oh, okay. How do you tell? How can you tell from back there?
If you kind of orient yourself, if you know you're looking at the north side of the Acropolis.
Yeah, I have no idea.
The Erectio is on the north end.
Mm-hmm.
The Parthenon is on the south end. And
but the Nike Temple pokes out like that on the other side, doesn't it?
It pokes out on the west side.
Yeah.
So the entrance onto the Acropolis.
It kind of would look like that too, a little bit, like a little box.
Yeah, but the thing about the Temple of Nike is it's right next to the Propylia. So what you see is the Propylia with the Temple of Nike sort of next to it. And then when you're looking at the Acropolis from the south, you see the Parthenon. And when you're looking at it from the from the east, you don't see anything. Or you see the Greek flag. That's where the Greek flag stands. And then this was I think this was a Saturday, right? Like this is the day 2 days after we got there. And you remember these gals here.
Oh yeah.
So this is
are those the original ones that were found, or
yes.
Just really? So they look like they're. I forgot if they said they were like remade or something. Look how intact they are.
They have been touched up. So those are those are the Caryatides, which in English you would say like the caryatids, the Caryatides. The caryatids, yeah. So I don't know if they're the
because charis is grace.
Yeah, but it's not Haris. It's not the Haritas. It's the Kari.
Oh, really? It's a different word. Okay.
Yeah, Caryatides. So what you see here is 5 of them, but there should be 6, and there is a sort of placeholder, which is sort of to Neal's right there. So these are the originals. They took them down off of the Acropolis. The ones that you see on the Erection, so they are propping up the roof of what's called the Caryatid porch, the porch of the Caryatides. The ones you see on the Acropolis are plaster remakes. These ones are protected from the elements and have been touched up and cleaned up, so they look, not pristine, but they look great. And then there's a missing spot for the 6th one that was smuggled out of Greece by Lord Elgin, along with a bunch of other artifacts that are in the British Museum that Athens wants back. So they have
those fucking British, man, in those times were crazy, dude.
Well, and when you go to the Acropolis,
the sun never sets on the British. They were trying to conquer the world back then. They just thought they owned everything. I'm taking this with me, motherfucker.
Well, when you go to the 3rd floor of the Acropolis Museum, and there's a video playing on a loop there that you go and you watch, and it shows.
Yeah, that made me depressed.
It shows how they
that video made. I was mad that they showed me that. I was depressed after. If you want to explain to them why I was depressed,
it's a video that describes in detail the process of looting all of the relics from the Parthenon by Lord Elgin and his companions and all the people.
And how it was a failure anyway. They didn't even get any. Everything they tried to steal, they broke.
Yeah, stuff like statues falling off. Falling up the Parthenon. They had
let's just try to grab it. Let's see what happens.
They had a hacksaw. They were sawing something out, like it was just crazy that they just stole, because nobody had any respect for it. No, right. and the Greeks weren't in control. The thing is, Greece was occupied at that time by the Ottomans. The
And
Ottomans,
were like, we don't care about that
yeah,
shit.
yeah, take all that, like just give them some money.
Right.
And then the Greeks get their independence. All of a sudden they have respect for their national treasures. They want to restore it. They want to like preserve it for posterity. And they're like, hey, can you give us our stuff back? And the Brits are like, no, we're not giving you your stuff back.
And they still don't.
Yeah, because we got it fair and square from the Ottomans who were occupying you. That's and it's a big debate because the thing is, like, I mean, what's your opinion of this? The British Museum's position is if we start giving things back, it's a slippery slope because then we're going to have to give back the Rosetta Stone to Egypt, and we're going to have to
It is. Well, here's another thing. I was in the Met Museum in New York City, and they have an entire from Luxor. They have an entire like temple that they somehow transported from Luxor all the way to New York City. Not sure how they did it. They must have did it piece by piece. And there's people protesting it on a daily basis. Like, give this back, give this back. And there's people like sitting there, like trying to stand in front of it and like just protest it in New York City.
Because if you think about it, I guess from the British perspective, if they're really proud of their museum, like they want that original caryatid to be there in that museum so people can set their eyes on it. And they're like, well, you Greeks, you already have the original 5. They're right there. Why do we need to give you back the 6th one so you can put a replica there?
Yeah.
And but like, I don't know, man. Why can't the Greeks just put up a replica and give the original back? Like, why can't you reunite the sisters?
Yeah, look at this. Look at my screen. This entire temple is all the way in New York City.
Wow.
And this right here, people were jumping in the water. They're throwing stuff in the water as a protest. They were standing in front of this so people couldn't take pictures. They were like, they do it all the time. It's like a regular thing they do. The students there. This is right by a school.
Yeah, so Annie's here.
Completed in 10 BC, probably by Cleopatra. Or no, she was dead by then.
But so Annie's expressing the Greek perspective of they belong to us. It's ours, right? It is.
Yeah.
I mean hard to argue with that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a national treasure. So yeah, those are the caryatides. This was day 2. So this is day after we arrived. We took a cab all the way to the Temple of Poseidon. That is in Cape Sunio. So look at that sunset.
I filmed that in 4K.
So make sure you guys are subscribed to Gnostic Informant so you can see the footage that we got. This was just my camera, which was not calibrated for this. There was like a full moon.
I went back there again too with Bexis's brother.
Yeah, amazing site. This was
that's the agora behind us.
Yeah, this is the ancient Archea Agora. And this was right in front of the temple to Hephaestus.
Yeah.
And
beautiful temple.
Like this is my favorite spot. Like I love.
I think so. I think that's one of the top spots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you just want to go for a walk and like chill, and that's the best spot.
And I think this was the second time we went on the Acropolis. It was a little later in the day. The first time we went there, the day after we arrived, we went early in the morning.
That time it was so packed. Remember that? It was so
packed, hot, and this was Delphi.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so you can see the mountains, Delphi, and the Temple of Apollo, kind of high up.
Old Doric columns, you can see it.
Yeah, amazing site. The theater. So this is like the same temple. So this is the Temple of Apollo from the ground level. This is from above, so you can see that theater was like right next to it.
And then there's another stadium above that. But they had a whole full-blown like masterpiece of like whole civilization up on that mountain.
Yeah,
they had everything up there.
I mean, just look at how majestic that is, and imagine like
it was still active in Roman times, Hadrian's time. Hadrian was one of the people that was like funding it.
I mean, there's basically like that valley down below, and then there's one road that snakes around the side of that mountain to get there, and that's it.
Because Delphi, if I'm not mistaken, Delphi's older than Homer, right? Delphi's mentioned by Homer. So
yes. Yeah.
So that means Delphi was active from, I don't know, 8th or 9th, 10th. Yeah, I will just say like the end of the Bronze Age, beginning of the Iron Age, all the way until around the 200s AD. Probably collapsed. I would say probably, I'm just guessing, probably goes out of use during the 3rd century crisis when everything goes out of use in that time period.
And when you're
that's a good 1,300, 1,400 years.
And if you look down, like from where we were standing, looking down on that, your back is just a huge mountain. Like it's a very well, like if you want to build like a fortress that's going to be hard to assail, that's a really hard to get to.
Oh my God! It says there was a Mycenaean stronghold on here.
Ah.
So that's even older than we think. It's like 1,600 years old, active for how long it was active for.
And same thing with Eleusis too. So this is Eleusis.
Yeah, Eleusis. Yep.
Neal got great footage at Eleusis, and that's all gonna like this. This isn't really the best angle there, but this is also like old site. That in the classical period it was already old.
What's so funny about that? If you read these like older history books by like what's his name? I'm trying to think. Do I have it over here somewhere? I forgot it where it is. James Ussher. He starts off his giant history book, and he like basically it's like and Adam and Eve and Noah, and then he starts getting into like King David and Solomon, and then he's like, and then the Greeks did Delphi, and then he loses it. That's backwards. Like if you read Israel Finkelstein, the temple doesn't really get like active until like after 9th century BC. By then, we've already had like 700-800 years of these temples being active. So this like James Ussher should have redid his whole entire history book, put the Greeks in the front, and then did all like the Jewish history in the middle, and then get into Christianity. That's how people had this like Josephine history in their heads back then.
Yeah.
You know?
And then so this was the square where the Easter stuff was going on. You remember this angle? Remember where we took this picture?
Yeah. I remember that one guy was messing with us.
So this is Philippopos Hill.
That was before that, though. That was before that.
Yeah, this is later. So this is Philippopo Hill. So the monument of Philippopo is there, where he was buried, and then you can see the Parthenon on top of the Acropolis, and then behind it, remember what that is?
That's what Luca Mountain.
Likavitos. Likavitos. So you can see that's one of the best vantage points in Athens. And that's where the Socrates' prison was, right where we're like down more, but right in that area. A little below that. Yeah.
That was a fun day. That was a good little spot we did.
Yeah. So I think I should probably play a few highlights from the interview. I'm going to share the English version so that the audio is like, for people who may not be able to read the subtitles. But did you ever get a chance to really catch it? Like, the background here, Neal filmed this interview, right? So Neal was, thank you so much for doing that. He mic'd us up, he set up the 2 cameras. It was all Neal's equipment, so couldn't have done it without him. But it was all in Greek. So Neal wasn't really like, he was just making sure that the cameras and the microphones were working. Did you get a chance to actually like watch and listen to this and like learn? Yeah. Oh, okay. So the key points here in the chapter breakdown, I think we were talking because there were a couple of questions that I wanted to ask and make sure I got him on the record for your documentary, because your documentary is focused more on the transition from polytheism to monotheism in Greece, and then now this revival of polytheism. And so religious diversity so I asked him basically about orthodoxy in the Greek nation and how this is like an official religion. And then we talked about religious diversity in modern Greece. And here I think is where he kind of addressed certain questions. Yeah. A personal opinion on the revival of ancient Greek religion in Greece. And what is the attitude of the Orthodox official church towards this revival? How should the church respond? For people who are thirsty for some knowledge that they can't find in the church and seek it elsewhere.
Yes, quite a few go. There are Greeks who are attracted to Eastern religions, right? Especially Buddhism, Hinduism, let's say. Some, a very small percentage, have turned to the traditional religion and are trying to see how to perform certain so-called revival festivals. Okay, this percentage of people is not large. Who?
This is what they always say. I always hear this. Can I pause
Yeah,
it there?
yeah. I
So
just paused.
this is very. I get why he's saying this, but it doesn't really answer the question. Number one, it's really fallacious. It's like because there's not a lot of people, that means it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know what the isn't that called like ad populum or something like that, fallacy or something?
Yeah, I think it's just the thrust of his response was that it's really he didn't even really want to talk about it, to be honest. Like he didn't. He kind of wanted to skip over that. And I asked him twice.
The ad populum fallacy, Latin for to the people, is an appeal to popularity. It's a logical fallacy where someone tries to argue a claim that must be true or good because many people believe it or don't. It's like you asked him what he thought about it, and he basically said it's just a few people. I mean, like,
well, yeah, he's saying it's a blip on the radar. It's not like it's
I'm not
really
worried about it, basically. Yeah. But it's actually more than he thinks. I don't think he's very aware.
Can you please just hear me out? No.
Hold on a second.
I don't think he's aware of how fast it's growing and how big it is in some of these areas that he's not around. He's only in Athens. He's only in the city. He's deep in the city.
I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. Is he aware of it? Like, does he know? Like how knowledgeable is he?
I don't think he is. Yeah,
but for historical reasons, the church has kept the old calendar.
Oh wait, that's not the section. Sorry, I accidentally clicked off of this. Let's go back. Religious diversity.
And I wanted to ask too, religious church and the church.
Quite a few go. There are Greeks who are attracted to Eastern religions, right?
Yeah,
especially
so
Buddhism,
Eastern religions,
Hinduism,
Buddhism.
let's say. Some, a very small percentage, have turned to the traditional religion and are trying to see how to perform certain so-called revival festivals. Okay, this percentage of people is not large. Who? Always, the Orthodox tradition's attitude toward whatever is different is exactly what Philip said to Nathanael. All right. For someone to have been born Greek and baptized and to be Orthodox and then change over time, that has happened. We said either to go to Eastern religions or even to Islam. Some have converted to Islam. Perhaps they saw a greater spirituality in Islam. I do not know. But someone who experiences their faith doesn't need other things.
Yeah, it almost sounds to me like he's more accepting of conversions by Greeks to Islam.
Right.
Than the traditional religion.
But that makes sense in my position, from my perspective, because he's seeing a monotheistic religion that has Jesus involved, and it's got, the angel Gabriel gives the message to Muhammad. It's closer, it's a little more comfortable in his mind than demons, daimons. Like he's literally that's literally how they see the Greek gods, as demons.
He does say that at some point.
Yeah, that's according to his theology. That's what they're supposed to believe.
Yeah.
We do not argue. I mean, we do not enter a process to hunt these people. Heaven forbid, right? Everyone is free. Besides, Christ told us, whoever wants can follow him.
But what would you say to a person who goes to a new temple of Zeus, for example, which is now
Neal's
in Arcadia?
Yeah.
Does this activity interest the church?
I think that the percentage of people who have these kinds of interests is very small, right? The percentage is not large. If we have a huge trend, then we will see.
But is it a bad thing, in your opinion?
Be careful to say, or if we say that ignorance is a bad thing, we will call it bad. The point is that there is such grace within the Orthodox Church that when someone approaches it, truly experiences it, that they don't need anything else. And you stated clearly, anyone who does not make use of, so to speak, all this wealth and all this grace is missing the point. Because deep inside that what maybe there's also a difference, you know, with the
AI had
Roman
trouble with
Catholics,
this
though
part.
above all with the Protestants who have lost the sense of liturgical tradition, of liturgical practice, of worship, of that deep penitent reverence shown to the Panagia and to the saints. Things very essential to us and very alive, you know?
So yeah, and then he transitioned to criticizing Catholics and Protestants from the question. So it wasn't a good, you know. There was at one point I was what I wanted, the question, and this was part of it was just my limitations and being able to like express exactly what I was getting at in modern Greek. But I was trying to sort of get his opinion, and I'm not going to try to dig for it. I think it's a little bit after this. I ask him what he thinks of the idea that like this church was built on top of a pagan temple, like from the material of that destroyed pagan temple, they built a church out of it, which is very common in that part of the world. You'll see just like Christian churches just plopped like on top of a pagan site. And I asked him, I'm like, do you think that this is a symbol of the sort of victory of Christianity? And he's like, over idolatry, absolutely. And you know, and that's what this is what idololatria, the Greek term idolatry, is the term that they use. Like when you hear in the English translation pagan or paganism or whatever, polytheistic, what he's actually saying there is idolatry. They're referring to it as idolatry. And so he's like, yeah, absolutely, because he says there that there were demons in these places that had to be sort of purged as part of the sort of process of Christianization of the old, you know, of the land of, you know, of Greece and the Roman Empire. Did you bring something up to share?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So this is, he said like, we don't care. No one's really worried about this. Actually, that's not true, because this was on March 8th, there's Bexis doing his thing, lighting up his flame. And he got arrested, and apparently the church is the one who called the cops. And this guy is upfront about it. This guy says, this specific action, which attempts to restore practices and perceptions of religiosity of bygone eras, causes us sadness and concern. What? This is a whole different answer than what you got. It is not a return to a bright and glorious past, as his followers complain, but a regression to a dark world dominated by human passions and demonic works. It's not a Greek phenomenon, but a foreign one, which attempts to be forcibly translated into Greek reality. Our glorious ancestors had themselves realized the inadequacy of their religion, and were searching for something better, which they discovered in Jesus Christ. I'm just kidding. All right, there's one more I want to show you real quick. Let me see. Where is it? Right here. This one. This is another one from the Wild Hunt Pagan News. First temple in 1700 years is open. This is the temple that I stayed in for an entire week. Or I didn't stay in the temple. I was at a little place up that right next to it. Anyways, they talk about how despite arrest and legal aggression from the Greek Orthodox Church, the first holiday, so like this is like well known that they're in this like battle with the church. It's not like just some random, it's not the government really, it's the church. In fact, I talked to his lawyer when I was there. I met his lawyer, cool guy. His lawyer said the government seems to be on their side and is like awarding them the victory, and the church is like the only one who's really getting involved and trying to keep these matters going. That's what he told me. So I'm just going off what he told me.
Well, and you know, because I used your footage of the temple itself, but the overlay, you know, the video that I overlaid on the part where he was describing, where I was asking the question I wanted people to see, it was that Vice documentary where they had all those people outside like performing this ceremony. And you know, I don't know what the official numbers are, but clearly like he's discounting it. And whoever is over in Arcadia trying to shut it down is obviously concerned about, you know, it's enough. It's more than a blip on their radar. They're like, we need to shut this down. Whereas like there is, he was just saying that, look, there's like religious pluralism in Greece. There's sort of a openness and grace in the Orthodox Church. Like, we're accepting of people that want to sort of go their own path. But if you really truly experience, Orthodox faith, you'll have no reason to leave. And then he kind of like gripes about, about Protestants. And it's funny because he started the interview acknowledging the fact that, like, we love the opportunity to like get together with, other brothers and sisters in Christ. He considers me a brother in Christ, even though, I'm a Protestant. And this is something that has been, since coming back, like I have been trying to read up on this. It's a big topic online. Like, it's there's a lot of content coming out of, especially like these Protestant channels, right? Like Ruslan and Gavin Ortland, and like there's a lot of people exploring this right now because there's mass conversion happening. Like, people are converting to Eastern Orthodoxy. If people are interested, the Orthodox Way by Metropolitan Kallistos Ware. This is a very, I'm halfway through it. It's a very, very good read about, this is sort of one of the catechism, the catechetical books that are recommended for catechumens. And then in Greek, there's Themata Orthodoxis Ecclesiastikis Katechesis. So this is like a modern Greek book that is a catechetical manual, and then another catechetical manual. So I'm very interested. I'm very open about it. It's just I grew up viewing this as like basically the narrative, and your perspective. I value your perspective on this, like from a historical perspective, is like the idea, like what I grew up with, is the idea that basically there was sort of authentic Christianity in the beginning during the life of Jesus, and then the revelation to Paul, and then the sort of when the biblical books were being composed, and everything was like pure in its unadulterated form during the period of inspiration, that then very, very early on started to sort of go downhill with, like, heresy, basically. Like, this sort of trend towards heresy in the official church that was above the surface, composing texts that were no longer, like the early church fathers and things like that. It's the perspective, the Protestant perspective, is that it was just a downhill coast all the way to like the late medieval period, when it just descended into like, the Catholics became heretics and the Orthodox became like everything. There was just rampant heresy.
Yeah, there idolatry, Mary worship, receiving penance from people who are in hell.
And then the Reformation comes about, and there's this sort of like shutting off of all of these barnacles of human, these man-made doctrines and teachings that were sort of foreign to what was considered true, Christianity. And then there was a resurgence of like, what it had been underground. That's the idea that basically Protestantism and, adult baptism and sola scriptura, that was always there, but it was like underground for like a really, really long time, and then it resurged. And from the Orthodox perspective that he gives, it's like the exact opposite. It's like, no, we were tracking really, really well, and everything, and God had ordained everything, and it was for a really, really long time. And then very recently there were these the Catholics became schismatic, and then the Protestants broke off from there. And everything that I've been watching lately, going through some of this, the content I mentioned on YouTube, like Gavin Ortland has a lot of interesting commentary on this, is that I feel like the strongest objection, the most consistent objection that I've heard from Protestants is just the idea that like the Orthodox brand us as heretics and say that we're all damned, basically. Like, and even though like some people push back on this, that's their interpretation. Like, they think we're heretics. We think that they are Christians. Like, we acknowledge that they're saved, but they're just misguided. And so the fact that they're so judgmental, and they don't think that we're sort of we're in the true church. Like, they think that they have the true church. The idea that they have about their own exclusivity is what they find so offensive. And I don't know if I find that offensive myself, because it's like, well, if they believe that they're right, if they believe they have that authentic tradition, then what else are they supposed to think? That like, it's like, oh, they're not universalists. And most denominations are not universalists. anyway.
Right. A lot of them are very exclusionist. Like even in the Baptist circles. Like I was at a church that thought if you didn't have the right Bible, you might be damned.
Yeah.
That's hardcore, but that's like a lot of these are very sectarian ideas. Like you have to pick the right one. This is a test. That type of mindset is like huge right now. But
you told me like I think in your reflections when you were there, I remember you saying like, you know, I'm I don't know. What are your thoughts about the primacy? Yeah.
I get the Orthodox pull right now. If we're just gonna go Christianity's the way, like let's just put ourselves in that shoes for a second. Like no other options. Christianity's the way. Greek Orthodoxy does make the most sense. It is the church that has so far, to the best of its ability, held on to the most ancient rites. And it has the original language, which is Greek. The New Testament's written in Greek. It's located in a position where mostly where the churches of Christianity develop, Eastern Mediterranean. What else? It does kind of have, in a way, the biggest claim to having like the original church, if that makes sense. Just historically wise, like you can sort of see how it can go either way. Like the Catholic Church could argue, well, you know, we were also in the beginning with them and we just broke off in different directions. So like we're both basically tied. Okay, fine. But I just don't see the idea of the early church ever having this idea where there was like one pope, if you will, on top. Even Peter didn't act like that. In the first, like I know the sources are scanty, but from what we have, it seemed like Peter and James and Paul and a few others were sort of like leading together. James was in his church in Jerusalem. Peter was he went to Rome, but he was also in Antioch, Syria before that. Yeah. So I don't think there was ever a time where it was like, we have to have one pope on top. I think that's a later idea.
Well, and you know, Judaizing was really the debate back then. It wasn't like, oh, is it Rome or is it Constantinople? It was like, is it Jerusalem?
No.
And
should we follow all of Moses's laws, or should we be a little less strict? And that's why Paul was so important, because they had this actual Jew Pharisee, according to them, raised at the feet of Gamaliel, who knew the law, who was a very scholarly person, who's telling them, no, you don't have to do all this. And it was like, oh, finally, here we go. That's why Paul makes a lot of sense. But anyways, I also, on top of that, the Orthodox liturgy, the way they have their services and the way they hold together the Pascha, it just seems like it comes off as like lively. I grew up Catholic, and it was very kind of boring. You couldn't wait to get out of there. It was like this weird thing where you had to stand up for certain parts, and then you would kneel down for certain parts, and then you'd stand back up again, and you felt like you were going through the motions. You were just trying to do what they tell you to do. Sit down, kneel, sit down, stand, kneel, sing, repeat amen, amen. Like, and then you walk up and get your communion, and it's just like the body of Christ, amen. Eat the wafer and leave. It was really like going through the motions and just do what you're told and leave. Whereas when we saw the Pascha, the Orthodox Pascha, they're there for 4 hours. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention. Catholic Church, Pascha, Easter, we call it, hour, 45 minutes to an hour. We're out of there. We're done. And that felt like it felt like ages. Every 5 minutes for like a whole hour. And then I'm here in Greece, and it's 4 hour service from midnight to 4 a.m. and it's lively. They're turning the lights off. They're lighting torches. Yeah. They're walking outside and getting into this giant mob. What? This is alive. This church is alive. Now from a Christian perspective, from the Western perspective, kids growing up Catholic, kids growing up Baptist, and they see this on the internet, on Twitter, being shared around. with the torches and all that stuff, they're leaving. They're gonna become Orthodox. It makes perfect sense to me why this is happening.
And so, just to be clear, the first time you ever set foot in an Orthodox church was in Greece?
Yes.
When I took you? So it's your first
Never.
Orthodox, first divine liturgy.
There's no Orthodox churches in Buffalo, New York. It's all Catholic or Protestant or Lutheran. But like as far as OG churches, Catholicism rules in New York. I'm not saying there isn't Orthodox churches. Of course there is. They're just not a lot. I just don't remember seeing any. I don't know where they are. I can tell you where a whole bunch of gigantic basilicas are in Buffalo, New York, all over the place. Giant, beautiful churches. But the Orthodox Church, man, just they're keeping that tradition alive, holding it. They're guarding it, traditions.
Well, and I asked him about musical instruments, because that's always been a fascinating thing for me. Because I went to Catholic school for a year, and I remember the organs, like the musical instruments that are just not there in the Catholic Church. And he explained that it goes back to St. John Damascene and the tradition that they preserve of the Orthodox hymnography and the Psalms, the singing. What did you think of that? Like, what did you think of the sort of the sound of the resonance of the Orthodox liturgy?
That's one thing that I'll give the Catholics.
Yeah,
I think they have better music. I do. I'm not saying it was bad. It was beautiful the way they were. They perform their song, they're singing the whole time. But the Catholics pull out the organs, and they got the women involved too, not just the men. Catholics really that's one thing in the West that they did really well, is they started incorporating good music. We have really good Catholic Christmas songs in the West, beautiful Christmas music. Where I remember listening to some, or I remember trying to find some Orthodox Greek Christmas songs, and they're great. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's not a lot. It's not like a huge gap between Catholic music and the Orthodox music. But I think the Catholics have the edge in that one department. I'm actually glad you asked that. I forgot about that. It's a big part of church music.
Well, there's a question popped up in the chat. Give me an example of monotheist thinking in Greek literature.
Pre-Socratics.
Yeah.
All the pre-Socratics pretty much they all had different ways of describing it, but they all sort of came to the conclusion that there was this one unmoved mover in the beginning. And so Aristotle literally calls it the unmoved mover. Actually, if you want to give me a second, I can pull out. I have Aristotle's theology. I'll real quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah, because it's a good question, and really, it's the God of the philosophers. There's so much overlap with sort of monotheism that later came about that it's there's a reason why this whole monotheistic religion took root in Greece, right? Like they were already prepped for it. They already had monotheism. They already had, the ideas of triune gods that, like the Trinity. They already had a lot of these ideas that just made sense, that now it's like, oh, okay, so the God of Israel fits this description of this God that we were already talking about.
Yeah. Now the Pythagoreans, going back to before Plato, back in the classical period, they even have the idea of the monad. So it says right here, the fragments from the doxographers. This is from Aetius. And then again, from another starting point, Pythagoras, Samian, who was the first to call this matter by name of philosophy, assumed the first principles, the numbers, and the symmetries existing in them, which he calls harmonies. And the elements compounded of both, they are called geometrical. And again, he includes the monad and the indefinite dyad among the first principles. And for him, one of the first principles tends towards the creative and form-giving cause, which is intelligence, that is God, the singular, God, theos. And other tends toward the passive and material cause, which is the visible universe. And he says that the starting point of the number is the decad, for all Greeks and barbarians count as far as 10. Anyways, he goes on and on about this monad figure. And he talks about, and he uses constantly calling God theos in the singular, not the gods, not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then fast forward a few centuries, you get to Aristotle's theology, a little more systemized by then. And then this is what he says in his metaphysics. And by the way, he disagrees with Plato on a lot of stuff, but this is one thing he says. There is something that is always moved with an unceasing movement, which is in a circle. And this is clear, not from argument alone, but also from the facts. So the primary heaven would be eternal. There is, therefore, also something that moves it. But since what is moved and moves, something is intermediate. And there is then something that moves without being moved, being eternal, substance and activity. So like he's talking about some unmoved mover that's that starts. It's almost like Aristotle might even be like the first deist.
Well, and that's why the Christians loved Aristotle.
They love him.
Preserved him, yeah.
Yeah. In the West, especially.
And then somebody commented, Akhenaten didn't invent no monotheistic thinking. Well,
so Atonism has some monistic tendencies. I mean, it's I would say he does, because it depends on how we define monotheist.
Yeah.
Because in that system, the Aten is the one. It's the all-giving life force, but it does have other beings underneath it.
But they're all like flow from the Aten, like they all flow from like the Aten. Emanations. Yeah. So in the chat, we're getting a lot of back and forth using terms monism and monotheism.
Right.
So
they're
I know.
Different.
Yeah, and
they're different because one of them has to do with theism and theology and religion and what you worship and what God you like. Monism is more philosophical. Like Aristotle is not a monist. He's not considered a monist, but he does have an unmoved mover. And like the Pythagoreans are considered monist because they believe in the one. Like it's not like theological and religious and it's not a dogma. So it's not monotheistic.
Yeah.
Whereas in like the Abrahamic religions are monotheistic because they have one God who's in control.
Well, and then there's somebody said he's a henotheist. So we have, henotheism. That's
when you pick one God over other gods.
Yeah, it's like you got a bunch of them, but you have one that's your primary.
The reason why I don't think you can, you see a lot of scholars even today that want to classify Yahweh's Judaism as henotheistic, and I get why, because originally it was henotheistic, and you can see it in the Old Testament where you can see the remnants of that time period where Yahweh is chosen over other gods, and he's the territorial God of Jerusalem, where there's other gods in other lands. Jeremiah, for example, brings some of the land with him to Babylon so he can worship Yahweh there. You can't worship Yahweh without the land. That's henotheism. But as time progresses, this is what these scholars the nuances never get brought up. As time progresses, as we get to the Hellenistic period, into the late antiquity, they don't think like that anymore. They think there's only Yahweh on top. That's what they think. That's what the Christians believe. It's just God. And then all the angels and demons are below that. So it's monotheistic in the sense where there's only one God in control of everything. And there's intermediaries, and yes, those are divine beings. So it is, in a sense, it's polytheistic too. But I don't think you can say that's henotheism anymore.
Yeah, or it's monolatry, so monolatria, right? It's like the worship of the one God, as opposed to acknowledging the presence of other divine beings. But it's just the category of God.
It's how we're defining it.
Yeah,
it all comes down to how you define monotheism. Like you can say that's not monotheism, and I'll say, well, what are you defining monotheism as? Because I might be defining it differently than you, and then we're talking past each other. Yeah. So.
Well, and okay, so one more segment of, since this is a watch party. One thing, this was interesting. I learned a lot from this interview. One of them was this part here.
Regarding the icon screen, the templon, which separates the sanctuary Toagio Vima from the main nave, you see that it's made of marble in our church. And because the church itself is very old, this templon, the iconostasis, is a later addition. Only one original piece has survived. This panel section is called a toracchio, a carved marble relief. an 11th century thoraccio from the old Kapnikaria is preserved in the Byzantine Museum of Athens?
I don't know I got that image. So I did the virtual tour of the Byzantine Museum of Athens. I haven't been there in person. We need to go. And I think if this isn't the original, I couldn't find anything that I know that this fits the period. So this is definitely from a church that is around that 11th century Byzantine style. So if this isn't the authentic one that he's describing from Kapnikaria, it's at least one that's very, very similar. But what he's saying is like, this is the way it used to look, which is like, I don't know. I think it's kind of mind blowing. This is before churches had the templon or the iconostasis. And so this is what he says about it.
This one is much newer. However, we retain the following. Whereas in modern icon screens, icons are normally placed here, as you see when you enter a contemporary Orthodox church, that custom did not exist in earlier times. It began in the 14th century, carried on into the 15th. From then on, icons were inserted, and the direct view into the sanctuary was blocked because the Greek lands were living under Ottoman rule. And the clergy had to be much more careful about what was exposed to the outside world. Unfortunately, there was also quite a bit of ignorance among the faithful, and so icon screens were put up and filled with icons. These are called despotic icons. And in this position, the icon of Christ is always placed. Sorry, the icon of Christ goes here, and the icon of the Virgin Mary goes here.
So the thing that I found interesting in that is that there is a sort of there's an acceptance of the development of their traditions, right? It's not all like, oh, like all of this goes back to like the original Christian. Like there are, 14th century traditions that they were putting in place that late to adapt to historical circumstances.
Yeah.
That's
why I said to the best or who keeps the traditions the best, not perfectly. No one is. They're all adding and changing. They're all doing new councils all the time. But yeah, I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, I don't really understand. Even though I translated it into the voiceover, I don't know exactly what he means. So I think what he's saying is, because he mentions that there was some ignorance, and I think what he's trying to say is that some people think that icon screen, the iconostasis, that we call it the iconostasis, he calls it a templon, a templo, that has just like always been the case in the Orthodox Church. And what he's saying is that no, originally we had these thoracchia, we had these little windows, there were these stones and these pillars and things. And then during the Ottoman occupation, for some reason, I should have got a deeper explanation of this, that the clergy felt the need to close it off. Like they didn't want the general public, maybe some of the Ottoman authorities would like come into the church and kind of like make sure that nobody was like, planning anything. Like, I don't know, like they were being monitored, and they felt the need to close it off for privacy, to hide what was going on behind the iconostasis in the sanctuary, and that just stuck, and that just became a feature of the architecture of Orthodox churches. And it's not originally it would have been open. There wouldn't be icons blocking, and you would have direct line of sight into the sanctuary. Super fascinating for me. I had no idea about any of that until I was in this, it took going to that old church and talking to Father Evangelos, who's so knowledgeable, to educate me on that particular aspect of, because I've been to churches in Russia, and like they all look this iconostasis, like boom, it's the icon screen or icon wall. And so I was interested. It was interesting for me to learn that was a later development.
Yeah, it is. And it's just crazy how the situation of the Greek church had to like go through all these different eras. Like they get conquered by the Ottomans, then they have to move into Russia, and then they like stick around. Then there's like a few that stick around under Ottoman rule, and then they keep some of their churches from the 11th century still there. And like it's just so fascinating to me that that's their story. Or the Catholic West had a little bit more of a cushy. I mean, I'm not saying it was perfect for them. Obviously, there's like they're getting sacked by the Franks and all this by their own people. But like for the most part, their existence was never threatened. like there was in the East.
Well, I think it's because the church itself, like when they got invaded by the barbarian, the Germanic tribes and stuff like that, the church was already set up with this network of of what do they call them, the archdiocese, right? Like the church became the government. Before it was like the government, the church sort of layered itself on top of the government, and then when the government toppled, all that was left was the church, and so that was the new administrative structure.
The Arians, the barbarians were Arian Christians already. That's another thing that saved them, because when they moved in, this is what Ed Watts told me. They moved in and they just kept everything business as usual. They kept the church there, and that's why a lot of people think like the Catholics have some like Arian tints to them. There's like a little tint of Arianism in the Catholic Church, especially with the Filioque. Like it's almost like leaning in the direction of Arius, where it's like the son might be a little bit subordinate to the father, a little bit, right? And the son, right? And so, what was I getting at? Oh yeah, so that's another thing. The West always had, even when they got raided, they were getting raided by other Christians, whereas the East were getting raided by Muslims or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's a whole
the Seljuk Turks.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing, and this was, you and I were talking about how this needs to be featured in your documentary, is that the Filioque, it's so hard for Protestants to really envision the gravity of it, of what this really, like the controversy over this like Filioque, like what does it even mean? Who cares? Who cares about like a few words that got slipped in, and and the Orthodox felt so strongly about it that they sent word to Rome, like, hey, we're getting invaded here. Like Constantinople's going to fall. This is your capital. Like, do something about this. Right. And they were like, we'll send an army. We'll bail you out if you just agree to add the Filioque in there. And their response
said
was
no.
Like, go pound sand. We are not, and I don't know if historians might not agree that that help could have done that. They may have been beyond saving at that point. Maybe. But the idea that the official, at least if that story's true, that the official response was like, no, like, please help us, bail us out. We're about to die. And it's like, we would rather die. We would rather lose our sovereignty than add Filioque into our creed, because that creed, we agreed to that creed. Like, why are you changing it? It's a big deal for them.
Look, I have it right here. I can see it.
Oh, sorry. I'll put it up.
So there's the original Greek, and then it's like, and so down here, it's the controversy arises from the insertion of the Filioque. So I guess the original translation should have been this: qui ek patre proceedit, which proceeds from the Father. But for some reason, those Eastern, this is before the Arians conquered them, so I can't say the Arians had any influence on this, but it might have been Arius though, right? Because Arius was around in that time. But anyways, the reason why I'm saying that is because he really was emphasizing the difference between the Son and the Father. And you can see right here, qui ek patre filioque proceedit, who proceeds from the Father and the Son.
Yeah. And what do you see in bold in Greek?
Filioque. Oh, kai tu hio.
Yeah, ke tu you. Or I would say ke tu you. So yeah, so the creed is kes to pneuma to aikion, to kyrion, to zopion, so in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, kek tu patros ek porevomenon, who proceeds from the Father, ke sympatri ke yo symproskinumenon ke syndoxazomenon. So and with who with the Father and the Son is adored and glorified. To ek tu patros ek porevomenon would have been the original, and who proceeds from the Father. But here you have the insertion ke tu patros, ke tu you, and the Son, ek porevomenon. Those three words, yeah.
They act. Go ahead, finish your thought. I'm sorry.
It's just the profundity of the fact that it's just these three words that are like a really hotly contested.
Yeah, but wait, I'm actually confused now. Is this in the original?
No.
Oh, so this is a Greek.
That's That's a Greek
Okay.
translation of what the Latins
Oh,
wanted.
okay, it's going
Yeah.
backwards. Okay, but the
So
original.
basically the demand of the West is like, okay, you want us to come bail you out and help you fight against the Seljuk Turks and prevent you from being overrun.
Here's the original.
They want you to insert ke tu you. Just take 3 Greek words and put them in your Greek creed. And from their perspective, they were like, look, if you want to stick this one Latin word in the middle of your creeds to make you feel better, like, go with God. You know, you can do that. They didn't like, they weren't making them take it out, even though they probably considered it bad. Like,
because this schism didn't, you're right. The schism didn't officially happen over this.
Yeah.
But a lot of scholars do think this was the seed that was planted. That it took about a couple 700 years for the. This was what really did kind of cause the schism, if you think about it. Like the Charlemagne and the Empress, whatever her name is, I forgot her name. Empress. Anyways, Charlemagne. That was all political secondary. They were already at each other's throats. The main deposes Irene. Yeah, Empress Irene of Athens. Okay. Anyways, but look at, you could see it right here, like tu patros ek poreman. And so, yeah, they just wanted them to add these 3 words, and they're like, nah, go kill it. You guys can go die. Like, well, yeah, it's just crazy. We'll die. Yeah,
we'll deal with the onslaught.
We're gonna move to Russia. This is what they did. But
and they also, the thing about we're talking a 400-year occupation that they were subjected to, in which the Greek Orthodox Church was the only institution that could preserve their language and culture and history. Mount Athos was like an independent sort of state, and they really have an amazing history when you think about how oppressed. I mean, I'm sure that there's like probably I bet the textbooks on this in Turkey read a lot different. But from my understanding, the Greeks were not allowed to ride horses. Greeks were like, they allowed them to have their religion because they needed to control them through some mechanism, right? Like they wanted to basically, the Sultan wanted to influence the Greek people through the Orthodox Church. So they allowed the Orthodox Church to continue to kind of administer affairs in the occupied Greek territories, but they were not nice to the Greeks. There's a good reason why the Greeks really hate the Turks for this sort of historical grudge that they have, and it's hard for Westerners to understand it when they go there and they just see it kind of, because I'm just speaking from my own perspective, right? Like, sorry, pull this up. It seemed to me, originally we're just like, what are they, just racist or something? Like, oh, we don't like Turks. We don't like, and it's not a race thing. It's like a deep-seated historical grudge.
This was the official layout of what happened of 1054. So the Holy Roman Empire was already in full swing. They already had their own emperor, and they had their own emperor over here. So there's 2 emperors at the same time, and then the Empress obviously was a couple 2 centuries before that, which was started. But anyways, the point is like, this is what it looked like. Kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
This is what I wanted to say. The way they bicker about Greek and Latin, it's like how we are like community of people, even though like we're at each other's throats with like the Ammonites and stuff. That's how we are. We're like, no, the Greek says this, motherfucker. It says this. No, it says this. No, it says this. You're wrong. He's lying. Like they're like us back then doing the same shit. It's kind of funny to think about when you take a step back and look at it that way.
So that was the part about the iconostasis that I wanted to share that I thought was so interesting. And again, just to continue the announcement, I will continue the pre-release on Patreon is done. So the original Greek version of this, if you want to hear what this guy sounds like, the link, I'll drop another link in the description. In the chat, it's in the description. Please go, make sure you're subscribed. I'm almost up to 2,000 subs on YouTube. So if anybody's watching this who's not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. I want to hit 2,000. That would be great. We can celebrate one of these Saturday streams. And watch the latest version that I just dropped in Greek if you appreciate the sound of the original language. and then go. If you sign up for Patreon, I will be pre-releasing all of my content on Patreon, and I will be making some exclusive content on Patreon, especially for my Greek students who are over on Patreon. So I'm the video that I've been playing up until now is it is the dubbed over English version, but the Greek version is available. So the thing I wanted to touch upon also is the well, first of all, where to start? Let's look at this section right
36.
here.
Yeah.
Can you explain the importance of icons in general in the Orthodox Church and how they're used?
According to the official Orthodox teaching, primarily Christ is depicted because he is both God and man, because he became man, and because every person's relationship with God is personal, face to face. That's why we depict him in icons. Of course, the icon is not exactly, it is indeed a sacred object, but it is not Christ himself, nor the most holy Theotokos herself, nor the saint themselves depicted in the icon. We venerate the icon, but we do not venerate the material. We do not venerate the wood and the colors. The honor, according to St. John of Damascus, passes to the original. That is, it is as if we are venerating Christ himself at that moment. Simply because, as humans, we need to perceive through our senses, we visualize in order to be helped.
You know what's so funny about this? This is exactly what the Greeks were doing with their idols, man. You just call it an icon, and now it's different. It's not the same exact concept applies. They didn't actually think that the stones and the wood and the sculpture was the god. They thought you're looking at a representation of the god, and it's just so funny how they get called idolaters for doing that. Then they just turn around and do the exact same thing, but just say no. Ours is our icons. Ours is different.
I don't know. I mean, my understanding of the mechanics of the way, and I could be wrong, of the way that it used to work in the older Greek religion was that you had the statue inside the temple, you had the altar on the outside of the temple, you would make a sacrifice on the altar and you would burn it, and when that smoke would go up to the god, that would essentially be the sort of magical spell that then gets the god to occupy in a sort of to manifest in that statue that was inside the inner temple. So that's why you couldn't go in there unless you were the priest, because it was holy. And I think that the mechanics of that
you're right. There is a little bit of a difference in far as the mechanics goes,
which is similar to the Jewish temple too. Like the temple of in Israel was also, you would do that sacrifice on the outside. The Holy of Holies was the physical presence of the deity on earth, whereas like they don't think that about icons.
Right, and you can almost argue that the ark was an idol. It's like that's where God is. It looks like his coffin almost, like it's weird. But okay, I get it. They're not the same, but nobody really thought that God was the pieces of wood and the actual statue. They thought it was like a way to get to the gods, which are spiritual. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or that the god would somehow occupy the statue when you would evoke. Like you had to recite the words, you had to make the sacrifice, there had to be the smoke, and then the statue was the sort of the vehicle that the deity would then occupy.
Yeah,
that's my understanding.
Yeah, that'd be correct. I think that's pretty fair.
But my, and I'm still learning about this. Like I could be wrong. People could jump on me in the comments and say like I'm wrong about this. But I think, I studied this in college too. Because I'm a Russian major, so like we studied a lot about Russian iconography, and and the Russians play a big role in this. Is the whole when we spoke about this with Father Evangelos, is the whole idea that because the icon is painted in a certain style, and in Russian they actually say that their icon is written, they don't say painted. I asked him about that, and I guess that's not a Greek thing, that's a Russian thing to write an icon, pisать ikono. So basically the idea, the way I understand it, is that typically in art that's done realistic art, what we would consider high quality, like Western style art, you have a perspective when you look at an image, right? So you draw, like if you're looking at train tracks, the lines of the train tracks go like this, if you're just looking at it in real life. And so when you draw realistic art, you want the angles to be in a way that mirrors reality, right? So that things go towards a horizon, so that things are proportionate, and that the icon style, the iconographic style that they're trying to emulate is the opposite, where it's like things don't go into the horizon like that, things go like this. And you're actually like, you are the horizon as the viewer of that icon. And so you're supposed to kind of get sucked into it, and that it's meant to be surrealistic. That's sort of the word that he, that hypervatiko is the word that he used, hyperbatic. So basically it's this idea that you aren't looking as an outsider in, you're actually kind of like the focal point of the perspective into that art. And it's meant to be surrealistic because it's depicting an otherworldly thing. And that there's a mysticism in it that I think the Western perspective or the Protestant perspective that just rejects it as idolatry is short-sighted. It means something different to them.
Right. Now there's a book. So what they're what that shows you is very common for late antiquity, more philosophically, more up to par, and less superstitious religious systems that you find, like Neoplatonism, for example, and the Hypsisterians. There's a book about this called One God from Cambridge Press. One God. It's by Stephen Mitchell. I think Stephen Mitchell died actually, but there's two authors in here. One of them died. I forgot which one it is. Anyways, from what's professor is it from? I forgot where school. I think it was Exeter. Yeah. Anyways, but they get into this whole like idea of like images sort of fading out of the thing, and people worshiping God in temples without images, and that became a thing in late antiquity. Like a lot of people were doing that. Even pagans were doing that.
Yeah, and I think also it's also interesting, when you go to the other interesting difference is the fact that the Catholics have statues and that the Orthodox only have icons. This idea
that's one thing I noticed when I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have three-dimensional, statues of Mary, statues of Jesus. You don't see like a statue of Jesus on a cross there.
I think you and I walked past a Catholic church, a Greek Catholic church that was there, and we saw the Mary statue. I think I was with you when that happened, and I remember just being like, "Oh, I haven't seen one of those yet." That's because it's Catholic. Oh, that makes sense. And I was like, it dawned on me that there was no statues in the Greek Orthodox churches. It was just paintings and images.
Yeah, it's as somebody who, traveled to Russia when I was 18 for the first time. And as an American, as somebody who, we tend to be accustomed to a sort of very Western centric point of view where we really always feel like we're the center of the world, right? Like that is sort of built into us as Americans.
Yeah, it is.
We're the center of the universe. Everybody needs to speak our language. Everybody looks up to our culture. And so it's very I think it's common for Americans to go to other countries where people have different cultures and different beliefs and different, and feel superior, right? Like I'm not confessing that that's exactly how I felt, but I remember thinking that is this what I'm supposed to feel? Like I'm in a country that's full of a bunch of confused heretics that are worshiping paintings and statues, and you kind of have to set aside that superiority complex that we tend to have as Americans and sort of go, be a respectful guest in another country, and open yourself up to the idea that okay, they have different, a different perspective on things, different traditions.
Yeah. I agree.
Were you gonna look into another book?
No, I was just looking through one God, and it's just you can see the whole iconoclasm debate was already happening before the Christian so-called takeover. Those ideas were already really being explored deeply by people, and it doesn't. The iconoclasm was part of the East-West schism debate. I forgot what they were exactly talking about, but iconoclasm plagues Christianity for the entire first millennium. Like they're debating icons and stuff and images and statues from the beginning of Christianity all the way until 11th century, until they finally just like stop. But like those iconoclasm debates were huge. Islam shows you Islam is like a nice little marker to show you what 7th century theology was like, because that was like no images was a big thing in theological circles, in Christian circles. And Islam adopted that. And Islam took it very seriously, and they still do. There are no images of prophets in Islam. You can't even show the prophets.
But I also think it's interesting that like the Protestant objections to iconography is like they always cite the Old Testament, right? Like they cite the Jewish Bible to say that this is wrong, even though there aren't really...
That's where the Muslims get their idea from. It says from Moses told us this. That's what they say.
Well, you know, one thing that I feel when I'm in an Orthodox church and I sit there and I look up at all of like, especially if it's really elaborate, it wasn't as elaborate in that church, but like if you just sit there during the service and let the sound kind of wash over you and you look at all these pictures, they're all telling a story, right? If you look into it closely, you can see that it's like the gospel narrative. There are Old Testament scenes that are depicted. And if you were in antiquity, if you were sort of the average person that couldn't read, that is kind of like your exposure to the Bible. You would go, you would hear the Bible in the original language if you're in Greece or, you know, in a translation, and you would just be absorbing the narratives that are depicted in these like pictographic depictions on the ceiling, on the walls, like they're everywhere. And I think that it's something that, you know, as a Protestant growing up in churches that just had nothing, I was just like, you know, like they were beautiful spaces with like nice light shows and things like that. But there were no images, there were no pictures, there was a big cross and the pulpit and like the pews and, you know, and that's it. There was very modern design buildings, you know, Southern Baptist Church was, you know, and so it's I think that, and the reason they can do that is because, everybody's literate. We live in a world where everybody's literate. Right, everybody just has their open your Bibles to page, you know, chapter and verse, and they read along. And that's a very modern privilege. Like a lot of people couldn't do that back then. And so
exactly that's where Protestantism was only able to become what it is because of the printing press.
Yeah,
you know.
So I don't want to keep you too long because you're a guest. If anybody has any questions. No stained glass windows. I didn't have stained glass windows in my church. I mean, I have attended churches with stained glass windows that were Protestant churches, but the stained glass windows don't tell stories, right? They don't I mean, I guess some of them might be more elaborate than others, but I never really stared that hard at a stained glass window and learned anything about the Bible. Whereas like I get a lot about I absorb a lot of the narrative. But again, you have to already be familiar with some of those Bible stories in order to really get what's going on sometimes when you're looking at those pictures. English, Ali said, English parish churches used to have wall paintings as teachings for the peasants until the Puritans took over and demanded they were all whitewashed over. Yeah, I mean, you know, like I think there's value in telling stories through pictures. Anything else so when can you make any announcement on the timeline of any of the stuff you're working on that maybe some of the people watching are looking forward to seeing, like your Greece documentary?
That is going to be a few more weeks away, a couple of weeks away. And then I also have the video that I was working on about some of my thoughts on the whole situation with Amon Hillman. That's going to be I think that one will be out first, and probably next week maybe.
Oh, okay. So you're almost around the corner with that one.
I was waiting for it because we had to talk to Luke Ranieri, and we waited for that. I got that now. And I was waiting for a few emails to come back from some people that we were emailing, and then I'm just putting everything together.
What did you think of Luke's pivot to studying modern Greek now?
I think it's interesting. I almost wonder why, but I guess he just likes to learn everything. So he's just one of those people that just wants to know every language.
Well, here's the thing I was like speculating on last week. I would never take credit, but like for some reason the timing worked out where we had a stream between Luke Ranieri and me and you where we were talking about modern Greek, and he when the stream was over, he kind of pushed back on me and questioned. He was like, "Well, you're not really saying that modern Greek and ancient Greek are the same language." I'm like, "Well, I'm they're different, but they're like I see them on a spectrum." And he was warning me basically, like, "Well, you should be careful about that because people are going to think you're not that you're a quack, like that you're like some of the people online who are very vocal about the what you were saying, the people who were like, oh, modern Greek and ancient Greek are exactly the same." And then he and I had an email exchange after that where we were kind of like, I said, I want to clarify what I believe here, like what my perspective, my approach to teaching Greek and stuff like that. And then he and I had like an email exchange, and then like a couple weeks later, he's like learning modern Greek. So I don't know if there's a chance that I had any influence, any inspiration, if I imparted any inspiration to him, that would be great. But I know that he has been talking about it for a long time. He said like he wants to learn it. And then where can you see the stream with Luke? Yeah, I think if you Neo Prototype, if you look at the description of last week's live stream, I put a link in there for everybody to see of Luke documenting his first session, like in earnest, learning modern Greek and saying like he's decided to do this. This is his new project that he's taking on seriously now. And in the thing that he said about it that he thinks is helpful is he said he realized that he's acquiring vocabulary in modern Greek that then transfers over into ancient Greek, very like it sort of boosts his ancient Greek vocabulary by doing that. So great. I'm excited to hear so the Carl Ruck Amon Hillman piece is going to be in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So everybody should be
and
ready
the
for
Ruck,
that.
yeah, it's just crazy how we talked to Ruck and he was like, had no idea about some of the stuff that he got cited for, and he didn't know what burning purple even was. And it's just like, what?
Yeah,
Wait
this
a
is
minute.
the guy who's
You're the
supposed
one
to
that
be
he. You're the
forced.
one that you're supposed to be the one scholar that's been backing me up my entire career. What? That's not true. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot.
And I do thoroughly steel man the burning purple and why I thought it was, and still do think it's very fascinating theory. It just ends up as a theory though.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, there's a lot of interesting sources that mention the color purple, but not all of them have to do with, like, we have to we can't just say because it says purple it's the same. And like what I mean by that is sometimes it's from purple dye. Dioscorides mentions purple dye, very specific. Other times it's a purple something else, a purple plant, a purple flower. That's not the same anymore. You can't just say because they're the same color, they're the same thing. That's another thing I get into. You'll see.
It's not House of Amen is falling apart. I
don't
don't know
want it to fall apart, and I don't think it is. I want them to enjoy. I like these people. I really do. I'm being serious. A lot of them are really annoying online, and you see me getting really short. And so many people are like, dude, you're an idiot. Some people, but there's just a few people, But like, I don't care what you think about the ancient world, that you think there's some secret hidden drug thing going on in every single source that's out there. I don't care if you think that. I care. I just enjoy these discussions and debating. Yeah. Apparently that was too much for some people, that I had to be sort of outcasted from that circle of the internet for not agreeing. For simply not the big one that for me was, I never ever agreed that the Old Testament was first written in Hebrew. That was too much for some people. That was like, that was considered backstabbing, I guess. Like you guys are sounding a little culty when you say that. You stabbed him in the back because you didn't believe in what he believed.
Yeah, because you didn't agree.
Yeah, like what? To you that's backstabbing? Then yeah, okay, fine. I'm out of here.
Yeah, Prototype said it's mostly the sycophants that are annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are people in that group that are more reasonable, and obviously there are the people who just say, "Oh, well, it's satire. It's he's kidding. He's kidding. He's he's not." It's
a nice way to like be positive, but the man is serious. He's serious. He thinks that scholars are lying and they know this stuff and they're all afraid to debate him, which is not true. It's actually the opposite. You and I know about 5 people who said they would debate, and all of those got denied. Who are they? One of them is Richard Carrier. One of them is you. One of them is me. What was the other one again?
Luke Gorton.
Gordon.
Yeah.
And then the other one is actually, believe it or not, Kip Davis, who said he was we never got to the official, like, but the point is he did say, yeah, I wasn't prepared the first time we met. I would be down to doing more prepared back and forth where everything's he was down. That's why he got on Danny Jones, because Danny Jones was aware of that. Amon said no, he already had his chance. I already beat him. Which is like, well, why not beat him again? Why not beat him again in front of more people? But you can see he doesn't want to do that. Danny Jones had him on because of that. So 5 people have offered to debate Amon Hillman publicly. All 5 were denied by Amon Hillman. He's the one running from debates, not us.
Ali Rowan says she offered to. So yeah,
there's another one.
But I think the thing is, though, that I have come to realize that he's not stupid. He's not like foolish. He knows what he's doing, and he knows what debate. He knows that it's advantageous.
And he's hilarious. He's hilarious.
But he knows it's advantageous. It would be it was advantageous for him to debate Bob Larson, because Bob Larson knows 0 Greek.
Yeah,
his whole thing is like, I need to debate somebody who's a classicist, and then you debate Bob Larson.
And and I thought you weren't supposed to do anything with money involved. There was $5,000 involved in that.
In an envelope.
Where was the devil's contract then? It doesn't exist, by the way.
And I also think I don't know.
I think Amon's an atheist. I think it's all a front. That's what I think. I think he doesn't. I don't think he believes in anything. I don't think he does. I don't think he has an altar. I don't think he's doing offerings. I don't think he prays to the gods. I don't think he cares. I think he's an atheist who just LARPs. That's what I think.
What do you think would be the result of a debate between him and Wes Huff that he says he wants so bad?
It would be it would end up, Wes would be like trying to get into the Greek and what the Greek means, and Amon would be grandstanding, and it would be a dumpster fire.
Yeah, he'd probably be waving like a Bible around, pointing at it, saying like, "You can't read this. You don't read this."
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He'd be he'll do some grandstanding shit. He'll just try to make it theatrical. He'll do everything he can to avoid actually getting into the text. And his sycophants would think that somehow is like effective, and it doesn't matter what he does. Doesn't matter what he says. They just think it's right. Like his rebuttal to me. Remember they did that rebuttal to me where you and I were, or it wasn't you and I. It was me. It was me and
Steven from Witch Doctor.
Yeah, me and Witch Doctor were talking, and I showed him like a whole handful. I could have kept going. You and I found like 20 of these texts that define the word neonisko. It can be anywhere between 15 to 30. That's why people ask me, I say it's 15 to 30. And by the way, that makes sense to me, because my life as a male from 15, I was acting like a grown-ass adult by that time. I was doing shit that I was out there having fun and going. 15 to 30, I was all like the same person. It wasn't until I turned 30 when I started growing up, and all right, maybe I shouldn't be going to the clubs anymore. Maybe I shouldn't be doing 15 to 30 I was one person that whole period. So that makes sense to me. But the point is, the sources do vary. Yes. Not all the sources have the same number. Some of them say 20 to 30. Some of them say they're different, but they're all of them. 0 of them go prepubescent. All of them are between 15 and 30. All of them. You cannot find one of them that says that they're prepubescent children. And then you have the one source from that lexicon, Hesychius, that uses the adjective childish, because when I was 15 to 30, I was childish. It makes sense. So anyways, the point is, I don't know how I got into that. The point is, the point is the rebuttal he made, where I showed Witch Doctor like a whole bunch of text, and he gets on his live stream. This was so mind-blowing to me. He gets on his live stream and shows one little speck of my entire thing, and he keeps repeating the one part. And then he
Because you
said-
got the date. Because you got the date wrong.
because I got the date wrong, and then I
Yeah.
found out later. That that part of the Hippocratic corpus was attributed to Hippocrates after all.
Yeah.
I found out later that I was actually correct on that, which I'm going to show in the video. And I even granted him that. I go, fine, you're right. I got the date wrong. Who cares? What does that have to do with my argument? What does that have to do with my source? And by the way, if even if I was wrong about the date, that pushes it farther towards the New Testament anyway.
Yeah, I know.
And the response that his sycophants to that video, they go, remember the one guy came on the live stream, he goes, I don't know, man. I saw the live stream, he got you. Remember what's his name? Brandon. Brandon goes, dude, I saw the stream. I don't know what he said, but he got you.
He owned you, yeah. And you're like, so what exactly was
what
it?
did he say?
Yeah.
I don't know what he said, but he got you. Like, you don't even know what he said. I know what he said. He didn't get anything. It was like a whole grandstand, like fluff theater nonsense, and nothing. He never addressed my points. He never addressed the numbers that were in the sources that it literally says from 20 to 30. He never mentioned the Delos inscription. He never mentioned the other 4 sources that I brought up. He brought up one source from the Hippocratic corpus, mentioned the date, which is a non sequitur, and then just kept going back and forth about that one part. I was blown away that anyone could watch that with a normal IQ and think that was a good rebuttal. So I'll that's all coming.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
And so last week, let's see. So the winner of the initial winner of my poster giveaway was Neal Prototype. So I shipped him one. He mentioned in the chat that he got one and he's framing it. I think Ali Rowan dropped a timeline poster tag in the chat. We'll have to talk about how to ship that over across the pond. So just as a reminder, I have been selling these posters online, so you can get one of these. If you want to support us, you can buy one on the Cross Bible website. Go to the Cross Bible store in the top. You can go to the store. I also have a poster that I made for Greek pronunciation that has like the Greek letters lined up against the English letters that I put a lot of work into. This is for modern Greek pronunciation. So if you're not into modern Greek pronunciation, you can skip that one. But that's also one that is a limited edition. I don't have as many prints of those. So those are not, I'm unfortunately not giving any of those away. But I do weekly giveaways for the timeline of the Bible poster. So feel free to, when you join the live stream, my intention is to give away one of those every single week and just ship it to you. But international shipping is a bit steep sometimes because I have to ship these in these little poster containers, and for some reason the post office treats those as like extremely rare. Like they charge a lot more for those packages than like a regular square shape package, even though they're pretty small. It's a 2-inch thick tube that I put it in with a little rubber band. So if you're interested in that, please buy a poster online. That's buying a poster supports us. Subscribing to the Bible study software supports us. We have the Patreon now, so patreon.com/crossbible. Links are in the description. Thank you to everybody who's supporting, everybody who is subscribed and tuning into the live streams. Thank you, Neal, for joining and spending a couple hours on a Saturday on the stream to talk about your reflections of the Greece trip. Anything you want to close out with? Any other thing you want to say?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, you have just attained true gnosis with Gnostic Informant. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your weekend, everyone.
Nice.
Boom. All right.